Hello again, everyone, and welcome to this episode of One-on-One. I'm Martin False. And throughout the years, sometimes I have guests on here that are very esteemed in whatever they decided to do. Doctors, lawyers, judges, district attorneys, senators, you name it, we've had them on. But every now and then, I like to get that person who behind the scenes works for the betterment of others, for charities, for the community, and our guest fits that bill tonight. When we come back from the break, we're going to go way back to his early days and then his South Terrebonne days. Ricky Felio is our guest on One-on-One. One-on-One is brought to you by the Law Office of Waits and Downer. And welcome back to One-on-One. I'm Martin False. As promised, Ricky Felio is in the house. Ricky, good to see you.
How you doing? Good to see you, Martin.
We have run paths together for so many years, whether it be the Haven
That we have.
or Rick's nightclub. We'll talk about that.
At the nightclub, you're not going to talk too much about
We won't
the
say it wasn't Rick's Cabaret. Let's
Let's
get that out the way.
Yeah, real
right
quick.
off the bat.
It's a family show.
Yes, indeed. Running into you at all these events all the time and just see the way you're always involved. I said, got to get Ricky on and talk about these things because you're like the quiet assassin. Yeah. You go around helping everybody out and somebody else gets to go on stage and get all the accolades, but Ricky's behind the scenes, always doing a good job.
Yeah, that's what it's about,
We're going to find out what started the whole deal. Go to the earliest years you could remember. Where were you born? And sort of paint a picture for me.
Well, I was born in Terrebonne Parish, but I grew up on Slater Street in Deggville.
Yeah.
Well, they should have named it Baumelanville because there were so many Baumelans around there. Mm-hmm. But right by the East Park Recreation Center on a dead-end clamshell road. And it was a normal, good job. It was a good way to grow up and all. And I lived on the fifth house. I lived on Park Avenue, right across from Herman Baumeland's Boat Works when I was a kid. And we had fun. We lived in the woods and did, hunted, fished, typical stuff. Some not so typical because we grew up, we had BB gun wars and, somebody abandoned an old camper. We would pick teams to go into the camper. Okay, and then one time we were going to break out because the BBs were going through the little windows. It was a little bitty camper. You could have pulled it with a Volkswagen. But it was funny that you talk about it now, and I'm thinking about it. And we broke out, and we all had BB guns, red wide BB guns. But Mark McCharge had a pellet gun he got for Christmas. And I have a knot right there that he banged. I looked on the other side of a tree, and he was pumping it up, and then I shot, and then I looked him back. Anyway. So I got a knot right there.
Well, you're lucky he was a good shot.
Yeah, really. And then we had to make up a story to my mom and dad because I was bleeding all over. And Mark, he said, well, tell them I pulled the branch and you're walking behind me and they hit you in the head. And that worked, But as early as I can remember was, just going to really a kindergarten at Houma Elementary, back by the woods off of Conley Street back there.
I've always said this about where you grew up, that area, and then, of course, your days at South Terrebonne, in the days of segregation, you were around the African-American community all the time, and I see you.
Well, always.
Yeah, and I see you. So South Terrebonne was a little different because I think their integration took place sooner than most schools. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, we had a little bit of, I can remember like at Oaklawn Junior High or something. But my dad was a paint foreman at Maine Ironworks, and most of the painters and sandblasters and stuff were African American. They, and he would take me over there all the time, and I got to know, just know him. I was little Ricky. So you just grew up. You never thought about it really too much. But but then it was out there. I've been playing sports, of course.
Right.
They were friends. We were always
Yeah.
sitting there.
And I've always sensed that about South Terrebonne, especially the people you played with, sports at South Terrebonne. I mean, you know,
Oh, yeah.
that's incredible times over there. And how many records still stand from your football days?
We have two for sure, 52 years ago. And it was all defense. We had a great defense. We have the least amount of yards scored on us because we played East Jeff and Bogalusa. We played them, and they were minus yards. I think East Jeff was minus 20 yards, and Bogalusa was minus 4 yards.
That's two good teams.
Yeah, that were two good teams, and it was. And then we have the most shutouts. We had the regular season shutouts were 7 shutouts, and we had 2 in the playoffs. And our defense, and look at our offense. I mean, look, you had John Breland, the quarterback. You had George Washington, at fullback, and you had Melvin Johnson at tailback. Robert Lagarde, wide receiver. Ricky Britt, wide, and you had Joey Bergeron as wing back, and you had some really. And
you had a tough line too.
Yeah, we had a tough line. We were small and fast.
Wasn't Steve Trosclair on that line?
Well, I could tell you a story about Steve Trosclair because that's how I got into sort of football shape, basically. Well, I had the pleasure of being coached by Buddy Marcello, Lanny Falgout, Coach Adams, Coach Taylor, Coach Groh, and Coach Pierce. And these guys were great coaches. And they would, they'd hammer on you some, but they just wanted to know, hey, look, you just give us what you best you got, okay?
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
Coach Marcello came in and he called us all in there. We were on the practice field, and it was during the spring, sort of. And he said, "I'll tell you something." So all of y'all, he said, St. Joe is closed down. And all those guys, football players, are coming here to play. Nobody's job is safe. We're going to our senior year. And they got a guy over there. He eats nails for breakfast. And we all like, eat nails for breakfast? So, named Steve Trosclair. Everyone looking at each other saying, oh, no, he had taken my job. He's not, so we got into shape. And Steve, I don't know if he ate 60 penny nails, but he sure had thumbtacks in his Cheerios because he was
He probably still eats nails for breakfast.
He does. Steve he's a character. He was a good guy, and he was so fast and all. And I'm thankful that they put him at nose tackle because he was, nose guard. Yeah.
Y'all defense got to practice against Melvin Johnson.
Well, we did. That's
y'all never saw offenses like that when y'all played them.
We helped each other out.
Yeah.
Because on defense we had Wayne Sellers, Linus Aldridge, Steve was in the middle, Big Harris Luke, Joe Blanchard, and then linebackers was Curtis Pellegrin and John the Animal Vice, who was a year behind us, and then and myself, I played outside linebacker. And then you had George Washington, Kevin Arsenault, and Ricky Britt. We had a good season. We were quick. We had it was a lot of fun. And like I said, on the offense, Melvin would, and then punt returns, kick returns. I don't know how many touchdowns they scored with that. It was, we beat Bogalusa 47-0.
Wow.
And Bogalusa was a power. And the year before that, we lost to Bogalusa. We went up there and played them. In the film, Melvin, it was 4th down, and toward the end, Melvin was like his whole body, half of his body was over the goal line, okay?
Yeah.
In the film, you could see it, and then they pushed his back, and it was 4th down. So, and then when Bogalusa made a touchdown, the refs were like clapping.
You were in Bogalusa back then.
Yeah, they were clapping and clapping. And I was like, man, and so when they came to Houma, Louisiana, to play us, we were ready for them. I just ran into about 3-4 weeks ago, for the Relay for Life. Mm-hmm. And I'm talking to some friends about something about when a friend of mine, and I knew a boyfriend, which said something about South Terrebonne. A friend did, and I said, yeah. I said, yeah, that was some days. And he says, you went to South Terrebonne? I said, yeah. You play ball? I said, yeah, I play football, yeah. So what year you graduated? I said, 73 I graduated, played ball in 72. He said, yeah, we played against y'all. I said, yeah, who'd you play for? I said, Bogalusa. Yeah, I put my hand on his shoulder. I'm sorry, but y'all deserve that.
All through the years, I kept hearing of Melvin Johnson, Herman Verdun, Ricky Britt, Robert Lagarde. And I'd always say those four names on TV. And everybody would always say, well, and you recite those names like it was. Yeah. I said, because when I started track at Vanderbilt, the one group of people that received so much prominence was that group.
That was it.
They were a tenth of a second off the national record.
Right. Right.
As a high school relay team.
Those guys would burn them up. And like I said before, we'd go to the track meets and all the other teams are looking at each other, this and that, on who's going to be second. Because they know they're not going to be first. There's no way. They're not going to beat them. I never seen them.
They'll drop the baton one time.
Oh, yeah. We dropped between Herman and Rob. They dropped the baton. Herman, Rob turns back, grabs the baton, and takes off. And when he got in the turn, you could see he was catching up. And when he come out of the turn, he had that guy maybe 4 steps on. But when he handed it off to Melvin kicked the afterburners in there, and they won it.
Because Melvin,
they got disqualified.
Melvin was never chasing anybody.
No,
I bet he was faster.
The only one that gave Melvin something to chase was Herman.
Right, and his own teammate.
Yeah, and then at Oaklawn, really, truly, Ricky Britt was faster than Melvin. Wow. Well, yeah, as far as the distance, he was faster. Britt had gotten into a bad car accident, I think it was sophomore year. That's how terrible. And he was in bad shape, hip and legs and stuff.
And they even joke about it when I get Herman Verdun and Ricky Britt together. They always joke about Herman will say, but that's a fast white boy.
Oh, yeah.
And I love that camaraderie.
Oh, yeah.
It's almost
we're like brothers.
Herman it's almost like the Larry Bird, Michael Jordan.
Yeah.
I'm going like, y'all, they
Magic
both,
Johnson.
They both were fast.
Yeah, Larry Bird. Yeah, right.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm.
People would show up just to see them run. Mm-hmm. And you had so many scouts, you had so many coaches, people were, and then football was the same way.
So you had 4 siblings?
Yeah.
All right, where did you fall in the pecking order?
I'm the oldest.
Okay.
Yep, I'm the oldest.
So you had to watch Sue?
Yeah, for a while. My little sister Susan, Crystal, and Russell Jr.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mom and dad. My dad was, he worked in the shipyards like everybody around. He either worked for McDermott or you worked for in constructions, in our neighborhood. Mostly that's what people did.
Where did you get your personality from, your mom or your dad?
Probably more of my mom. My dad was sort of a quiet man. And for good reasons I found out later why he was, and he was always loving. He had a big heart. He was always loving.
He was a veteran, huh?
Yeah. He fought in the Korean War and he got wounded. He actually fought in one of the biggest battles, they called it the Chosin Reservoir battle, the Frozen Chosin, they called it.
Yeah.
It was 40 below zero, and they got overrun. I think they estimated about 120,000 Chinese came across the Yalu River and tore up a lot of American units. We took in 17,000 casualties or something like that.
And Mr. Sue was in the Frozen Chosen also.
Yeah.
2 local guys. There might have been more. Those 2 I know for sure.
He was detached to what they call X-Corps. He was on the eastern side of the Chosen, and it was a bad battle. He never talked too much about that. he would buy me guns like 410s and stuff like that, and I would hunt and stuff. But back then, we'd be 10 years old out in the woods by ourselves with shotguns.
Right.
But I'd never seen him shoot one. He showed me how to clean it, but he didn't handle it. My dad, I lived with my grandparents when I was 12.
Yeah.
Right across from Rouse's.
Yeah.
We're going to South Terrebonne. I wanted a motorbike. And I was 16, and I did a little work, and I was working at Mr. Harry Bazeron's grocery store after school. And my grandma, they wanted me to have a motorcycle. But I got my Aunt Frances thinking she was going to co-sign, because I was making a little bit, like $35, like on a Saturday I'd work at the store a week, which was, for being 16, that was some good spending money and stuff. I could save it up money. My grandmother called my dad, and my dad called me and told me that, that I wasn't getting a motorcycle. That my aunt wasn't, she talked my aunt out because she called me and told me that she couldn't co-sign it because my dad would get mad at her or whatever.
Yeah.
And my dad called me and told me that same thing. And I smarted off too. I said something I shouldn't have said, whatever. And he came over to my grandmother's, and my dad never laid a hand on me up until that point. And then he grabbed me, put me in a corner, and I was going to quit school and I was going to join the service. Because he joined the service when he was 17.
Right.
Shipped to Korea. When I said that, I don't know, something just kind of clicked in him, and there's a nerve that runs right there. He put his thumb right there, and he's like, and he had me, I was like paralyzed, and he told me, buddy, there's nothing glorious in war.
Right.
And he always told me there was like three levels of fighting, like schoolyard, bloody nose, black eye, or medieval, broken bones, this and that, or primeval. And he said it's pure primeval. And he just started telling me. I never even heard the story. Then he was telling me about the battles he was in. And he said at night, someone would blow a bugle or blow a whistle, and then somebody would shoot a flare, and it was Chinese just coming over and over, just trying to get to him. And your weapons would freeze, and that's why they called it frozen chosen. Everything was freezing up. Food would freeze. The battle would die down, and in the daytime, he said the Air Force kept them pinned down, kept them, it was a mountainous area, and he kept them pinned down. Mm-hmm. And you had the P-47s would come in and shooting and strafing, but at night, you didn't have any fighters at night, and it was all, and he just said to me, he said, look, buddy, he said, there's nothing glorious about war when you see your friends that you just knew that you went to, basic with and all that, you see blown up, and it just...
So you were not going to win that argument?
No. Believe me, the next morning I was at South Terrebonne.
Yeah.
I was at South Terrebonne at work, and I didn't, but he did tell me, that you can get a motorbike if you pay for it.
Right.
If you save your money. And I did, and I got a motorbike. And I know the reason why they didn't want me to have a motorbike, because I had no business on a motorbike.
For all of your cases, including those with catastrophic significance, call Waits and Downer Law Firm. This one-on-one program has been brought to you by the law offices of Waits and Downer.